What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. It's Friday. We made it through the week. Tomorrow we'll have Newswave Week in Review as usual, where we'll go through your guys' comments throughout this past week and see what everyone had to say. Now, there's quite a few things to get into today. We're going to go through some of the quick pieces of news. I talked very briefly about the Switch Pro controller now having full official Steam support. After I hooked mine up, I posted an image on Twitter of it actually being in use, and I noticed something. The light actually stays on around that home button, and based on some of the comments below, I realized some people didn't even know there was a light there. I happened to know that there was an LED there after opening and checking it out. But yeah, that is a light ring similar to what's on the Joy-Con controller where the home button is. So it looks like that'll be in use at some point. I'd like to think that that's part of the online service that's showing up. But yeah, when you plug it in, it comes on. If you need to turn it off, you just hit the sync button at the top and it will turn off. So it will actually stay on until then. Now we also have Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze that releases today on the Nintendo Switch. $60, a little pricey compared to what it originally was. However, I will say the game is top-notch. It is an outstanding platformer. And if you're kind of in the mood for a pretty much straightforward platformer that has a lot of quality behind it, I would take a look at it. And of course, we talked about this Gaia 5, right, yesterday, the demo, and some crazy stuff happened pretty much from then till now, where they had to pull the demo down, and then they also had to delay the game until summer. No actual release date. Remember, it was supposed to come out next week. It was supposed to come out next Monday, and now they have to completely scrap those plans. It's coming out sometime in the summer for Gaia 5, which is a game that's been out for quite a while, actually, on other platforms. And the demo has been just completely pulled. There were stories going around that the demo that they put out was actually the full game that was kind of hidden. People figured out how to unlock it, and then that's why they had to pull the demo down. Now, if that's the case, I'm not 100% sure. It just seemed to be thrown around, and now the demo is, well, MIA. It's completely missing. So we can't really tell otherwise at this point. And of course, we get more backwards compatibility from the Xbox One. It now supports Dragon Age 2, so if you're a fan of Dragon Age 2, you can go back and relive that on your Xbox One S, your X, or I guess your OG. Again, that's one that I'm sure people will go back and check out, as it did have okay performance, we'll say that, on the 360. Now, without all of that quick news out of the way, let's get into some of the bigger stuff, including Nintendo talking to their investors about the 3DS and what their plans are for the future with that system. So let's get started. So we saw Nintendo's full investor briefing where they talked about how well the system's doing. 17.8 million systems essentially had shipped at the end of March, and they went over sales figures for different games, revenue, big profits, all of that. Well, they also took questions from different investors and everything. Big Q&A where Mr. Kimishima answered all these questions alongside a whole board of different people. And they had some interesting stuff to get into. Now, Kimishima, of course, still the president. The new president will be voted on in June, I believe, at the end of June. More than likely, the new president will take Kimishima's spot, as Kimishima pretty much handpicked him. So until then, he's still answering all the big questions, and he answered quite a few. There was one specific one that stood out to a lot of people, because there are people who still ask about the 3DS. When is the 3DS going away? When is it getting phased out? When do I not have to worry about games just going to 3DS like that Luigi's Mansion that kind of hit a sore spot for a lot of people? We'll say that. Well, they did answer that question and kind of elaborated on what their stance is for the 3DS, and honestly, it makes a lot of sense from a business perspective. They said, consumers purchased 3DS systems in numbers we expected last fiscal year. It is an ample software lineup at a price point that makes the system affordable, especially for parents looking to buy for their kids. We expect the demand to continue during this fiscal year as well, so we will continue to sell the product. Given that Nintendo Switch is a home gaming system that can be taken on the go, this situation may change if it grows from being a one per household system to a one per person system. The price of the Nintendo Switch is not something with which most parents would buy a system for every one of their children in a short period of time. Moving forward, we will work to ascertain what kinds of play people want at which price points, and as long as there is such demand, we will continue to sell the Nintendo 3DS system. I see the product coexisting with Nintendo Switch at this point in time. So it makes a lot of sense. As much as I know a lot of gamers may not like it, it actually makes a lot of sense for Nintendo to keep the 3DS around, mostly because if they get rid of the 3DS, their cheapest system is now $300. If they keep the 3DS lineup, their cheapest system is $80. $20. So you could see why that is a much easier pill to swallow for a parent, like he said, who would buy 3 of those 2DS systems. They even come with a game like New Super Mario Bros. 2 or Mario Kart. It comes with it, like $80, and you get a game? That's a steal right there, and I get why they'd want to keep that around. It's easier for kids. The Switch is more for the adult who is more responsible with it, right? It's not something that closes like the 2DS XL or the 3DS or 3DS XL. It's not something that's easily protected or even packed together. Like, that's all one piece. You have, with the Switch, you have Joy-Con controllers. You may have to bring the dock with you. You may have to bring, charging cables. And there's a lot of stuff you have to bring with you. Sure, you kind of have to do that with the 2DS and everything as well, but you close it, goes in your pocket, and you're on your way. Even for a younger kid, the Switch, it's kind of big. So it makes sense why they want to keep it around. The real question is, how long can they coexist? Is there a number in mind for that Switch where they can then pretty much dump the 3DS after 50 million Switch units are sold? Because by their predictions, that will be next year. They'll be close to 40 million. If they end up breaking through their expectations, it will be 40 million. Is it time then to cut the cord from the 3DS? They appear to be supporting it at least somewhat through 2019, so maybe that is the last year for the 3DS, 2019. I think that'd be pretty successful. That would give it like a good 7-8 year run at that point, depending on when they kind of cut it off. There was also a question further down that didn't have to do with things like cell phones and mobile. There's a lot of cell phone and mobile talk that was going on here after their partnerships were announced earlier in the press briefing, but there was another one that was asked about how are you going to get to 20 million and how are you continuing to sell these systems going forward, the Nintendo Switch. And Kimishima talked a lot about what they can do to improve their sales, giving people plenty of different ways to play the thing, like we've seen with Labo, right? Different ways other than that, which is crazy. Of course, providing a massive software, basically software to pick from. And then he talks about keeping an eye on their competition and then adapting to the market as needed. Specifically, we all figure competition to them is PlayStation, Xbox. What are they doing, and what do we need to do to kind of adapt to what they are doing and where they may be taking the marketplace? Because Nintendo likes to do their own thing, but of course, the marketplace can shift drastically at any time. They even talk about how they are technically not a necessity company, right? They don't make food or stuff like that. These are all things that most people don't technically need, but they want. So they need to at least come up with innovative ways to make people want to play their system if they're not going to be competing on like a graphical powerhouse 4K, 8K system. They need to be creative, and that makes sense. But it's interesting to note that they do talk about adapting to the marketplace. While the competition will change, Nintendo kind of is keeping an eye on them, maybe changing with them at times. So that's where it's going to be interesting going forward. Is there a Switch revision coming down the line soonish, or next year, or the year after that? It does sound like the Nintendo Switch is not necessarily a system, but a family of systems. It also might make sense for Nintendo to take a look at the bottom half of the budget lineup. Sure, you could do things like eliminate the Joy-Cons coming off of it and everything and make it so it's a Switch Mini, and some people will say, well, that defeats the idea of the Switch. Yes, but to be fair, taking the 3D away from the 3DS kind of eliminates the idea of the 3DS, right? But they did it anyway and made the 2DS. They even got rid of the clamshell. Why? Make it cheaper. So maybe you do see a cheaper Switch, so they do have a budget model that is $150. I mean, that's a little easier to swallow than $300. If they could ever get the Switch down to $100, that would absolutely kill it at retail. $150 though, kind of where that 2DS XL, that's at least more manageable. I do think Nintendo will explore that budget option as well, though. Next up, let's talk about God of War, a game that I absolutely love playing. I actually finished it yesterday. Yesterday morning, actually, I finished the game. But when you have the credits rolling, you'll start to realize that there's actually a lot to do in the game even after that. I'm not even close to technically beating the game, but I have to essentially finish the main storyline, and it was great. I absolutely like the game, and in fact, it seems like a lot of people like that game, and even though it's a single-player game, which, according to some bigger companies like EA and Activision and stuff like that, well, it's single-player games aren't what gamers want, right? Come on, that's not what we want, except the God of War seemed to sell 3.1 million copies in the first 3 days on the market. That is absolutely insane. That does make it the fastest selling PS4 exclusive. All of this was announced over on their Twitter account. I am so happy that this game is absolutely crushing it at retail. That is great news, especially if you're like me and you enjoy these narrative-driven single-player experiences. And there are people who might not like God of War because they say there's too much story. Honestly, they do a great job keeping you interacting throughout. There are very, very small times where there are prolonged periods where you're not controlling your character. You're pretty much essentially controlling them the entire time. So it is a great game, and honestly, it's going to be hard to beat for Game of the Year going forward. But of course, there are some more things coming out. I'm just really happy to see that a single-player game that doesn't have the microtransactions, right? Doesn't have the season passes. It's just a straight up, you buy this game, you get the full experience. And honestly, that's a game I wouldn't mind seeing DLC, much like people didn't mind seeing DLC for The Witcher 3. This is a game I would like to see them add more stuff to it because it really is that good. You do get your money's worth with the initial buy-ins, so great. I'm super happy this game is selling, and we'll see what the next single-player experience is that we get, hopefully from Cory Barlog and their team at Santa Monica. But hey, we'll see what else Sony has up their sleeve for their other studios. Next up, let's talk about a realization people seem to have, specifically some press outlets seem to have, about the Atari VCS. Yesterday, I saw a lot of people sending me this article, which I thought was kind of funny because it was meant to be an extremely sarcastic article, and there seemed to be a revelation that people started to realize. The Atari VCS is going to launch with that $199.9 price for early birds, right? It's going to be $200. It's about $50 cheaper, I guess, than the regular price and everything. That's great. If you're one of the first ones in, you get $50 off. Except there's one thing that I also kind of noticed, and I wasn't 100% sure, but it seems like more and more people are confirming this or figuring this out. It does not appear to come with a controller. It looks like it's going to be the system at $200, and it's just the system. And of course, I guess cables plug it in. There's no controller. Now, there are USB ports, which is fine. And I guess you plug in a keyboard or a mouse or whatever, because it runs Linux. It's odd that a system would come without a controller. Apparently, the controller is being designed by PowerA, and PowerA is hit or miss at times. I've been okay with some of their controllers. I know there are a lot of people who use like the Zelda controller that came out, the Mario controller came out for the Switch, and they seem to use it fine. But the system doesn't come with a controller is weird. It's almost as weird as like a portable system not coming with a power cord, but Nintendo got away with that. So here's Atari. They're going to attempt to get away with not giving you any kind of joystick or controller or anything. Next up, let's talk about Beyond Good and Evil 2. It was a game that closed out Ubisoft's full E3 presser that they did, and people were really excited because they remember the original Beyond Good and Evil and thought this is going to be great because maybe it's a similar idea, maybe it might not be a direct sequel, but maybe it'll pull from that and everything. And they did release some more footage, some behind the scenes, some work in progress, some gameplay, and it looks interesting. I'm not really sure what to make of it though. There's just not enough there yet. But for people who are really, really looking for any bit they can of this game, check out some of the video footage they put out. It was interesting to at least see, but I've watched it. They show some things where they have like kind of like hand-to-hand combat. They have a character fighting with a staff. They have you kind of maneuvering ships and stuff like that, and it visually looks good. I'm just trying to really figure out what you do in the game and what else there is to it. Now, we don't really know much otherwise, and we are hearing that we're going to see a lot more at E3 about this game. I don't think it's coming out this year. I think it's a 2019 game, but I feel like I need to see more of this game, but I at least like to see that there is some gameplay being released for it, right? There are games that have no gameplay out there recently, like Crackdown 3, and that makes us worried. So I guess this is a good way to kind of keep us remembering this game and just to show that, yeah, it's still happening. We're not disappearing for a while, but check out the footage, and I assume Ubisoft's going to be full-on showing this game at E3, at least as much as they can. And our last bit of news, I'm going to show you guys a Kickstarter that looks really interesting, and I hope it actually happens. So we're going to take a look at this very quickly. It's called 198X. You're going to see some of the trailer here, and what's interesting about this game more than anything, you'll see the title, obviously, 198X, but it's actually designed to kind of run through all different genres that we can really think about. I mean, seriously, they have things like the beat-em-up genre, the shoot-em-up genre, the racing game, the ninja game, the RPG, and seriously, it just goes on and on. The idea is you are essentially in an arcade and you're playing through these different arcade games, and it kind of works into the story. And I like the idea of that. It's really cool to kind of shift from a racing game to like an old school RPG, right, to a beat 'em up game, and it's neat to have those. And I guess that maybe the way the story looks will shift. Maybe you're fighting a boss in a beat 'em up stage, and then all of a sudden you jump to another one, and that same boss is like an RPG big boss from like a Final Fantasy or something, and you have those gameplay elements instead. It sounds really neat. Now, they are looking to launch it March 2019, so they're looking at another year or so, right? And they're looking for just over $56,000. Currently, they're a little over $10,000 now, but they still have about 29 days to go. Now, they are looking to put it on pretty much everything: PC, PS4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. I like the art style of it, I like the way it looks, and I like the idea of jumping around with all these different genres. Sounds really cool, so I'm hoping they get there, but I guess we'll have to see if everyone else feels the same way. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for Newswave today. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, guys. Really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave a bunch of comments down below about everything we talked about today, whether it's Nintendo talking about the 3DS and the Switch coexisting. They seem pretty much on board with that. I mean, the 3DS is their budget option for the parent maybe at Christmas time that needs to get 3 different kids, 3 different systems. It's a little easier to spend, you know, what, $240 on 3 2DS systems rather than $900 on 3 Switch systems. I kind of understand that at least a bit. And hey, there's a very large library going back to the DS days. That's right, DS and 3DS. That is probably one of the best lineups in history, honestly, of games. Seriously, tons of games to pick from. All the Pokemons and Marios, you got Metroids, Mega Man. There's so much stuff there that, yeah, I get why some people don't want the 3DS to go away, just because it still technically has potential in the marketplace with its price point, but I'm sure Nintendo eventually will have to move on, because gamers will probably start getting tired of it at some point. I'm sure many already have. Also, let me know what you think about the Kickstarter project 198X. Do you think it looks cool, or if you're going to pass on it? Also, let me know what you think about Beyond Good and Evil 2 or God of War sales. I know there's a lot of single-player fans out there that were really excited to hear about those numbers. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Make sure you stop by tomorrow. Newswave Week in Review. We got Spawncast tomorrow night as well. Then we'll try to take a look at that Oculus Go on Sunday. It's going to be a lot of fun, so make sure you stop by, and I'll see you guys Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time for Newswave.